Morning. This is Friday, and this is Coach Ellis, and you are with me on Faith Fridays. Look, I know I've been away for a little bit, but I want you to know things have been happening in the church world. While I was away, there's this thing that was called the Nashville Statement that was put out by a group of conservative Christian leaders. Some very famous folks among them, R.C. Sproul, James Dobson, and so John MacArthur. And these guys put out a statement, these men and women put out a statement that they consider to be a view on the LGBTQ issue in the church. Now, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer. I'm not sure how we make distinctions. I'm not here to talk about those distinctions. I am here to talk about that statement. And that statement has caused an uproar in the Christian community. And priests and spiritual leaders from across the liberal spectrum, they've been talking about this thing, and now what we have is a lot of vitriol on both sides about what's going on. So I'm fascinated by what the church world's response is. So we're going to talk about this all day on Sunday on my 2 o'clock show, Why Trust What God Allows. We're going to talk about it on my Sunday night show. Trust What God Allows will be on stormtalkradio365.com, and Sunday night at 7:30 Eastern Time. Blog Talk Radio, Survival Christian Radio Network, on my show, Why Church People. We're going to have this transformational conversation. I have spoken with pastors and church leaders who are in the alternative lifestyle. I've spoken with pastors and leaders who have members of the church who are in this lifestyle. I've spoken with former members of this lifestyle who now coach and mentor and train pastors and their leaders on how to minister to this community. I've spoken with ecumenical lawyers lawyers who specialize in church business. I've spoken to conservatives and liberals, and it is amazing to me how much vitriol is on both sides of this issue. So my question then, and on Faith Friday, my issue is, how does the church minister and win people to a greater lifestyle with Jesus? How do we convict or aid in the conviction of sin and not in the condemnation of people? The Bible, to me, this is really fairly easy. The Bible says that when you find a brother in sin, go to them that you might win them. The Bible says that we ought to love our brother as we love ourselves. The Bible's very clear that the pathway in order to win somebody who we believe is in a sinful lifestyle is to lovingly confront and not to condemn. So how is it that this lifestyle choice, that's how I phrase a lifestyle choice, others will say they're born that way, whatever you believe, how is it that this lifestyle for conservative Christians is more heinous than any other sin? How is it that in the church we will rail against what many church folks call an abomination, except for when it comes to our choir directors and our worship leaders? How is it that we will have such a duplicitous, contradictory position on this lifestyle? And why is this sin, if that's what you call it, so much greater than any other sin? I am convinced, church folk, I'm convinced, church people, I'm convinced, religious folk, that we spend more time trying to condemn people for a lifestyle than bringing them into a closer reality with Jesus. Now, I would tell you, I was watching a young lady yesterday who was talking about growing up and becoming involved in his lifestyle. She said what won her over was the love of God. That the woman who mentored her and coached her didn't deal with her lesbian nature. She dealt with her as a whole person, about her gluttony, about her finances, and about her life in general. And the idea behind this coaching mentoring was that if Jesus gets into your system, he'll work everything else out. And I believe that we spend a lot of time on trying to convince people that we know what the Bible says and beating them across the head with the Bible, instead of simply loving them like the Bible says and showing them, oh, what we do is so much louder than what we say. And we spend too much time on the doing part and not the being part. If we are to be the church, the Bible says, and they'll know we are Christians by our love. Now, love doesn't always mean hugging and kissing and squeezing and holding. Sometimes love means disciplining and having hard, aggressive conversations. But everybody is different. If the church really wants to have an impact in the community, and in fact, I read one article that said that 50% of all members of the LGBT community consider themselves practicing Christians. How is that possible if the church is doing its job? And the way it's possible is that God sees people through the prism of the blood, not through the prism of their sin. Because if he saw us through the prism of our activities and sin, then I would have no hope. Now, I'm not a member of the LGBT community, but I've done other things. You know, being promiscuous as a heterosexual is just as bad as being promiscuous as a homosexual. Being a liar or a cheat is just as bad on heterosexual as it is on a homosexual. Doing the things that are against God does not, the Bible says there's no Greek or Jew, there's no black or white, male or female. We can say that there's no gay or straight, because the bottom line is that God sees us through the prism of his blood or the lack thereof. So we in the church must understand and see people how God sees them. Does it matter if my brother calls himself homosexual? Does it matter if he's living this lifestyle that's counter to what I believe that God says is best? Does it matter in the end that they've decided to do things differently than I would? In the end, it doesn't. What matters is, did they have a salvific experience with God? And if the answer is yes, then it becomes my responsibility to see them through the prism of the blood. And we all of us got issues. And if we're honest about it, we all got that favorite sin that we don't want God to touch. So how are we busy condemning people for that? That's like the Pharisee that was praying loudly in church, Lord, thank you that I'm not like that other guy. And who was rebuked, because that is not how God intends for us to live. It's not thank you I'm not like them. It's thank you I'm not like I used to be. Because there's enough junk in my trunk to deal with. I don't have to worry about your sin. There's enough sin in my life. I don't have to be concerned about your sin. But what I can do is, out of my love for you, express to you, this is how I believe God says is best. And just because I can't do it doesn't make it not true. So extend some love. Extend a hand. Extend some conversation. But keep your condemnation to yourself. Hey, I ain't saying, I'm just saying. You know what I'm saying? I'm Coach Ellis. You can catch me at coach@elliscrum.net, or you can catch me at Coach Ellis on Facebook. Come join us Sunday, 2 o'clock. Trust What God Allows on Storm Talk Radio 365.com, and at 7:30, White Church People, blogtalkradio.com/SRCN, Survival Radio Christian Network, and White Church People. And we're going to have these transformational conversations. Until next Friday, God bless you. Have a one-tabulous day.